it really is infuriating to me, because you have this marginalized group like queer people, non-binary people, and they're going through all of these things. They're actively losing their rights,
right?
And then they have to justify their reactions to that, and that in and of itself is just another injustice that the queer community is going through right now.
It can be really isolating, and it becomes almost potentially gaslighting, because it's like you're having this experience, but everyone else around you is telling you, no, it's not that bad.
Yeah, like, oh, you're overreacting. It's really, that's not going to happen.
But I think that's also, again, part of the whole strategy. I'm feeling it now, but like I've always been the type of person, I have a hard time believing that people are just being horrible to be horrible. But I believe it now.
Yeah.
And that there's intentionality behind what is happening and how it's happening.
Oh, yeah.
And I think for me, I've always kind of thought like, oh, evil is just about being like blindsided, or you're maladapted in some way, right?
Yeah.
Like you cannot be fully aware and conscious of what you're doing and still do shitty things. And yet it feels
we're beyond that. Like there was one that I read about a couple days ago, and some of these things, they just seem so outlandishly cruel. They're like, how is this real? Like for instance, when Trump signed the executive order saying that his administration would only recognize someone's biological sex at birth, male or female, that has a lot of implications that we don't even know about yet. And one of them was when that order went into effect, it changed a provision called the 2003 Prison Rape Elimination Act, or PREA. And that was passed under the administration to combat like the rampant sexual assault that happened in the U.S. prison system. It was applied by Biden and Obama to protect trans inmates, because they're already at like a really high risk of assault. So under this new executive order, those protections are gone. And what is the point in that? Unless it's just to make people suffer.
Yeah.
I mean, things like those are the things that we're dealing with now.
Yeah. And I guess there's an element of thinking like, I don't know. It's like, how can you know all that is happening and still do it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, again, I could understand being short-sighted, not understanding the full implications of something, but I think you have to know at some point, and especially when you're like the president or something, like you have people around you who, it's like, if you yourself don't know, somebody else is pointing that shit out to you.
It's not a byproduct of his executive order, I think. And I think that's something that a lot of people are still struggling to kind of wrap their heads around. This is the point, is to, eradicate these marginalized groups. And I think once we start to understand that more as a community, I think we might be able to organize a little bit better, because I'm hoping that we'll get more people interested in wanting to protest this.
Yeah. Well, I think more people are waking up, but I know that's such a trigger word, but I think more and more people are beginning to wake up. And I think it might take that, like it might take like people really, like, I think shit might really have to hit the fan for people to like really react. And unfortunately that's going to come at the price of a lot of harm. But unfortunately I do feel like pain is often a touchstone for change. And I don't think that's a healthy or the best way for it, but any sort of toxic change or toxic relationship usually ends with a lot of pain, And so I feel like maybe I think AOC was talking about this too. It's like, it's a capitalist, like, this country was kind of created this way, and as much as we want to paint this beautiful American dream, like land of the free, like there's a lot of the things about this country that have been set up for it to become corrupt and to fall in the way that it's going to. So in a lot of ways, it's doing exactly what it was created to do. And we need to create something different. And sometimes something has to die before something else can live,
That's unfortunately
not to get all spiritual and shit.
No, unfortunately, I think that's true. And I'm worried that in this country, we've always sort of had this mentality of like, well, that won't happen here.
Yeah, we're above it. We're beyond it. But
yeah,
it
like, we're
wasn't that
protected
long
here.
ago that we were getting Japanese folks and putting them in concentration camps not far from here.
Exactly.
It really wasn't that far.
They had underground tunnels for that here in this city.
I know. It really wasn't that long ago. So it's like, and yet it still feels like to us like it was either something that never happened or it was so whatever that like that's so like, oh, we would never.
Exactly.
And it's like, no, we had camps. Like we had camps. We ain't no better.
Yeah.
We ain't no better than any other country or any other group of people. We can be just as horrible to one another as anyone else.
And I think that's what worries me the most is that mentality that so many people have. Just that, yeah, it's really bad right now, but they're gonna stop this. Like the Democrats are gonna do something to prevent that from happening because this is America. Stuff like that doesn't happen here. We're safe, even if it's really terrible right now. It's just gonna be 4 years and then it'll be something new. And I think that that's a really dangerous outlook to have right now.
I couldn't even imagine this going through 4 years of this. Like it just doesn't feel like it's gonna. I cannot imagine it happening that long.
No, I mean, it already feels like it's been 1.5 years and it's been 9 days.
Yeah. I mean, it just feels like something would have to give. Like something would have to give. Like people would be done.
Exactly.
I don't know. I don't know what that means, but.
And yeah, you're
to
right.
go at this degree or this level for the next 4 years would be destructive, to say the least.
Yeah. And well, I mean, so many things are happening around the world because of this, and
yeah, I mean, it was kind of cool to also see other countries and groups of people in other parts of the world that are like pulling for us.
Yeah, and protesting.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of scary that it's so difficult to see those things on social media here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, I've been hearing some people say, last night I heard a couple people say that they feel really bad that they're not doing anything.
Well, then stop feeling bad and do something. Oops. I mean, not so much. Like we all have that process, right? But I think, and some of that might be real for us to check into. Am I not doing anything? Because I think sometimes we are, and we're not fully aware of it. So I think if somebody is saying that to themselves, I think the big thing would be like, really think about, are you really not doing anything? I think that's something we all need to really kind of be looking at, because I don't think we can afford to be like not doing anything. But I think we often have to look around and see what we are actually doing, because I think sometimes we are doing more than what we realize. And just existing as the people that we are in this day and age is a lot. Still going to work, still showing up for our families and our friends. Like to some degree, I almost feel like that's the most powerful thing we can do, is just live our lives anyway. To get married, to still go by our names, even if the government doesn't say they want to, or go by the genders that we go by, you know what I mean? Regardless of what the government is saying. And I think, that's a hard thing to do right now. But at the end of the day, it's just, it's not just the government, but like, we got to live our lives.
Exactly.
Especially if things are going to get worse or things aren't going to change. Like we can't wait until, we can't wait until things are okay to be okay.
I think that even just, like you said, existing right now, or creating art, anything that we're doing right now is an act of resistance. So if it feels like you're disappointing yourself because you're not at rallies or you're not doing these things to protest, you're still just existing is an act of protest at this point. So it's just take the time to be gentle with yourself, because it's been so much right now, but eventually this is terrible, but eventually this is going to feel normal. And then once it does and everything kind of balances out, and you might feel like you have a little bit more to give
and more agency in whatever's happening, because right now it can definitely feel a little hard to find that grip.
I mean, especially after the week we've had. I think that everyone is reeling from that and trying to find a baseline. And I think that's another part of this plan that he's doing, is it's like it's trying to unsettle us and dysregulate us so much that we can barely do the basic things that we have to do every day.
Yeah. Can you believe? So like the cafe was just a few days ago. Our first ever Trans Boise Cafe was like, today's Wednesday, so it was Saturday, but it feels like it was a lifetime ago.
It feels like it was at least a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. And it was awesome, if anybody's wondering. It was really cool to have people show up and just kind of check in about things. Like paper, we mostly just sat around and like talked, which was really kind of cool. But then we did check in with some folks around like documentation and that sort of thing, which is probably something we could talk a little bit about, because I think things have changed since when we first started talking about paperwork. We were very much about like, get your stuff, get it now, like get your passports, get your gender marker, get your name changed. And that might be something you might not want to do right now. For some folks, depending upon their situation. We know that people who are wanting to get X's on their passports, that's been kiboshed, right? They're saying if you're changing your gender marker, that also might give some sort of flag. And again, it's hard for us to say like what anyone should do in this particular situation, but we did want to just kind of let people know kind of what's happening. I know there are a lot of really great people from the passport people who work in passports who are sharing a lot of information online around kind of having to deal with that. So if passport is something that you're really passionate about, there is a lot of really great information out there to kind of like figure that out. But I know for me personally, I know we did that thing a few weeks ago now, and I talked about how I filled out my paperwork and I was excited to do all that. And honestly, I didn't do any of it. I didn't pay for it. I didn't have the money to pay for things. I didn't send anything in. So at this point, I'm just gonna, I'm not gonna do anything right now.
It's hard. Like I think I was one of the last people to get a gender marker change on a passport because mine came in the mail like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But I didn't use the gender marker X, and that's the one that is most under fire right now. And the way that they're doing that, the way that they're able to target it, is with his new administration, they only recognize male and female.
Right.
So right now, anyone who has an X on their passport, that is being targeted.
Gotcha.
To the point where we're hearing that some people are having their passports confiscated, and there's the possibility of even like if you're trying to come back into the country with a gender marker as X, you can be detained possibly. So that's where we're at. So I think, we can't tell you what to do, but if I personally was going through that process again, I don't know if I would change my gender marker right now.